Hey guys, Interjection here, and I think it's about time that I made an Age of Empires 3 commentary, because let's be honest, the last one was a fairly long time ago, and they don't seem to be coming out very regularly. But I want that to change, and I want to show you my YouTube channel really quickly before we jump into the commentary. But basically, I uploaded this video here called AOE3 Cash Prize Event Challenges of the New World. You don't have to watch it, I'll summarize it briefly in like 20 seconds, but essentially I'm hosting a best of 15 between two high-level players, and they have to play as every vanilla civilization. They have to beat their opponent once with each different vanilla civilization, and every time they win a game, they are no longer allowed to use the civilization that they won with. So that's going to be really interesting, because the more games they play, the more games they win, the less civilizations they will have available to them for the last few matches that they have to play, and I think that's going to be pretty intense. But the point of telling you this is, whether you're going to watch it or not, I'm going to upload these videos to my YouTube channel. This was really, the only reason I'm hosting it really is, well, of course I wanted to host an event, but I also felt I need some more recorded games for my YouTube channel. So this is going to create those recorded games, and I'm going to cast those exclusively on YouTube. I'm not going to be streaming those on Twitch or anything like that. So this is for YouTube, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. So hopefully this is what's going to bring out some more regular commentary from me, actually having access to a nice series of recorded games that all belong in one best of 15. But yeah, there's that. Let's get into this commentary here. I've cleared out my recorded games folder, and the only thing left in here is H2O versus Nagayumi. This is from PK Clan Tournament number 4. Now, I could cast all of these games, but and then put them into the playlist for PK Clan Tournament 4 coverage. But I decided against that, partially because the very first game, which I'm clicked on right here, is an Iroquois mirror, and we all love Iroquois mirrors. We definitely want to see one of those on the channel. No. And then, if I'm not casting the first one, then I might as well just pick good ones out of this, because if I am going to cast that best of 15, that's going to take a long time to cast. 15 games, potentially, that they could play is a lot of games. And if I'm halfway through this set of games here that they played in the quarterfinals, then, that's going to take even longer before I can start on the actual... Yeah. Anyway, we'll jump into this one here, which I quite liked. It is a British mirror on New England. And, of course, the players are H2O and Nagayumi. I'll introduce these people in just a moment. They are fairly good people, fairly good players. Anyway, here we have H2O in the south of the map, in the colour blue, playing as the British here. He's going for, right as we speak, a 90 food treasure, and he's probably going to get that not even before we're 15 seconds into the game. So an excellent treasure find already, really early on, and it's going to help him age up to the next stage nice and quickly. There are often quite a lot of decent treasures on this map. New England is definitely a good map for treasures. There's usually lots of nice little ones containing food, wood, etc, etc. But what it does lack is those coin treasures. You don't have those little muskrat treasures that the Great Plains usually provides you with, say 50 coin and 30 coin, that kind of stuff. And for that reason, it looks like H2O's left his 100 coin crate on the floor. As you can see, he's building a house out of the wood that he started with, and he could have actually built he could have actually built a market with that wood, and then bought some wood with this coin here. And then if he collected a tiny bit of extra wood and coin, then he could get his hunting dogs upgrade as well, and then have a manor, a market, made use of that starting coin, all those good things. But since you don't have those muskrat treasures, here's one here. Usually these don't spawn. Usually they don't spawn, and you can't count on them doing so, but usually you don't get these, and it makes getting a market less viable, and just racing up to the next stage is often a better idea, since you don't have to then, because if you did get the market, you'd have to collect all of the coin, and finding 80 food over here as well, really massive treasures really early on. That's going to help him up to the next stage really quickly, especially... I know I'm rattling on about this market now, but, if you do build a market, it does actually slow you down to the next stage. It's usually worth doing, but now that he's found these two massive food treasures, he's actually in a position to perhaps race up to the colonial age, especially since he hasn't built a market, and then perhaps have more of an aggressive agenda. That's on the cards. Whether or not he'll do it, who knows. Anyway, over here now, he's going for a Carrera de Bois treasure as well. All these massive treasures. Like H2O, like creeping like an absolute monster, because this thing is guarded by 4 black bears. You can see here, getting that one there to run back whilst the other one keeping that full, at damaged hit points so it didn't heal up. Of course, if you walk away from the treasure, all the guardians will heal. But only walking far away enough for one of those bears to run back without the other bear healing. But you can see his HP on that Explorer. We're not only just over the 2-minute mark, and his HP is really, really low. He's found only 3 treasures, and his scouting is horrible. He's really not knowing at all where his hunts are. And as British, you often say to yourself, well, I better not bother with that treasure because, you know, I'm going to have to scout the map, got to find my hunts, and then start bringing them in. But in this case, doesn't really know where his hunts are, and that could hurt him later on in the game, potentially if his opponent decides to do some sort of rush. But here, this Carrera de Bois looks like he's going to be bringing in the only hunt nearby, which is this deer herd. I mean, he's got his berries in his base, which New England has, so he can kind of fall back on those. But this could really hurt him late game. He doesn't have a lot of food available to him, and his other nearest hunt is, you know, in the center of the map, which is often hotly contested over. Of course, you always have the option of boat booming, though, if there are fish available in here, and I expect H2O will have a water deck ready. But now he's going up to the next stage, going up to the colonial age, and he's starting to build a market in transition, switching all of those settlers to wood so that he can build some, of course, manor houses. Most likely we'll get his hunting dogs and the gang saw upgrade for the wood. But let's switch over to his opponents in the north of the map. In the colour red today, here he is, playing also as the British, as I mentioned earlier at the very beginning. It is a British mirror. Here we have Nagayumi, possibly going up a little bit more slowly than his opponent, since didn't find quite as much food, but is doing something very similar now. I believe, though, he did actually build the market in the Discovery Age. So the difference between the two builds so far is that he went for that early market, favoured the early market there, and we see that Nagayumi actually does have some pretty nice herds, and that well, these herds are definitely better than his opponent, though his coin mine distribution is not quite as favourable. He doesn't have quite as much coin, but I suppose we ought to compare their age ups. Take a look at Nagayumi in the top there, the Discovery Age bars, green, it's going by. We'll switch over to H2O and we can compare how much further ahead H2O is. A little bit further ahead, but perhaps those food treasures not making quite as much difference as we first thought that they might. Anyway, Nagayumi, take a look at his treasure finds. He has found, by 2 tomahawks here, without even taking a look at this list down the side here. He's found 2 Native American warriors, which are actually quite good, especially for British, because they don't really have any other scouting unit other than their guy, and you know, these can help you scout. And at the same time, there are lots of big beefy treasures, such as a Carrera de Bois, and even this settler here, which he's now going to get fairly easily with these 2 tomahawks, actually losing one of them, but definitely worth it. A little bit unfortunate, but definitely worth the trade. I mean, a settler is definitely going to help you. It's essentially like 100 food every 2 minutes. It's completely ridiculous as a treasure. It's really, really good. But yeah, Nagayumi sending 700 wood as we speak, and he hit up, of course, with the outpost wagon here and 200 coin. He's now adding in a barracks, which he collected the wood for during transition to the colonial age. Just going to put that down. And when that 700 wood arrives, I imagine he'll start spamming out lots of manors, and he might decide to add in another barracks, possibly a stable, or maybe neither of those buildings, but depending on what he intends to do. And we'll take a look at H2O and take a look at what he's doing. Of course, he's up to the colonial age a little bit faster. He's got his 700 wood as well, chosen that as his first shipment. However, he has not decided to build a barracks just yet, and I imagine the barracks will come out of the 700 wood here. Perhaps not quite as interested in repelling any colonial pressure, because I suppose in a British mirror, the metagame of a British mirror is that you both want to boom and lay down lots of houses, and of course get that steel traps upgrade like he's doing here with the wood. So, in transition to the colonial age, instead of collecting wood to, in inverted commas, waste on a barracks, you could build a manor house and have that settler sooner, and then build the barracks slightly later, because you probably won't be seeing any aggression from your opponent. Now, 600 wood on the way, and that is, of course, probably going to be used very much for the same reasons as the 700, which is building manors and stuff. But Nagayumi also sending 600 wood, and I find it, let's take a look at his military. Yeah, he's got 5 musketeers out already. He's going to have his 10th musketeer out before H2O's barracks even goes up, I would imagine. This, you know, he could actually mount some sort of aggression with these musketeers. Yeah, he's got 5 musks, a tomahawk, an explorer, and, you know, he's probably going to have 15 musks by the time that H2O has 5. So, yeah, these musketeers, especially considering that there is a trading post here unguarded, could be used to siege that down and mount some sort of aggression on his opponent. Anyway, what can these players do in this matchup? Well, H2O clearly has gone for the option of let's just build lots of manors and boom. You can see lots and lots of them going up right now, and has perhaps neglected building military. Here's his first 5 musketeers, I believe. Yeah, first 5 about to pop. As you can see, if he was being attacked at this point in time, I think he'd have a hard time dealing with it. But, you know, as British, you do think to yourself, they want to boom in colonial the same way that I do. They want to make use of their civilization bonus, which is, of course, turning wood into settlers. It's fairly expensive, 135 wood for a settler, though you do get 10 population as well, which I suppose is a nice bonus. But you're unlikely to see any aggression, as I said. And for that reason, perhaps you can get away with it. But in this particular game, I am actually surprised that these musketeers aren't, Red's musketeers aren't actually doing anything. They're going to try and kill this explorer, which is scouting his opponent's base. Of course, H2O wants to know what's going on, and perhaps wants to see what shipments are going to be sent, but these musketeers not going to let him get away with that. Anyway, what can these players do? Well, let's talk about what H2O is doing before we talk about other options he might have. But he's sending 700 coin here, which has arrived on the floor, and he's going to use that to hit up to the Fortress Age after doing some booming. You see here he has 14 manors, which is 14 additional settlers on top of what he would normally be able to train, and then he's going to go up with a fairly nice economy after having made use of his civilization bonus quite nicely, to then make use of it in the Fortress Age, where you have access to cannon shipments, and you can upgrade those musketeers to the veteran status, and you have access to dragoons and things like that. Now, British usually isn't that good in the Fortress Age, because they don't have a lot going for them. I mean, a lot of players, well, let's say, I don't know, another civilization, let's say Spain, for example, is very different in playstyle, because its civilization bonus is lots of shipments, and you might go up to the Fortress Age really, really quickly to get there. You have access to skirmishes, which are already veteran. But whereas British, their civilization bonus, they want to stay colonial. They're very much a colonial civilization. They want to make use of this first. So I think this is one of the better options open to them to get use of this out, and then use that economy to some really, really powerful unit combinations, such as, of course, the 2 cannon shipment that they have there. Anyway, let's switch over to Nagayumi, see what he's doing, and then discuss what they could also do in this matchup, I suppose. But actually doing the same thing, he's already going up to the Fortress Age as well. Let's take a look at how far they're aged. Take a look at Nagayumi up there. He has got, this is his bar. Let's switch over to H2O. H2O, a bit further ahead, and this could work to his advantage. That's where this 80 food, and I suppose the 90 food treasure is going to come into play, perhaps. But then at the same time, Nagayumi has spent a lot more resources on units. He's got 25 military units, and right now he could be pressuring this tower and this wall whilst his opponent is aging, and perhaps he's not doing so. He hasn't scouted him, so he really doesn't know what is going on, perhaps. Perhaps that's why he's being passive and staying back, because he's not sure what to expect. But at the same time, he could definitely siege down that trading post. Anyway, going up to the Fortress Age for very similar reasons to H2O. But other matchups, or other things in this matchup, I suppose you could consider, is, British... when you're against the British, they don't like being pressured early on, and yes, you're still playing British yourself, since it's a British mirror, but you could think about pressuring them early on. You could go for some sort of Expo pike composition. I suppose it would be longbow pike, but that could be really harmful, especially against H2O, because his hunts were pretty bad, let's be honest, and some sort of early aggression could really stop this player. I mean, yes, you think, oh, if this guy got rushed, he'd be destroyed. Yeah, but he wouldn't have gone up to the Fortress Age if Nagayumi had applied some sort of pressure. I mean, H2O will have like 6 longbows in his deck, which are really, really useful for countering stuff like that. And the other option that British players can go is Musketeer Hussar, but I'm not sure if that's appropriate in this matchup, since, of course, this guy's now up to Fortress Age, and Musketeer Hussar kind of struggles against, regular unit combinations, I suppose, such as skirmishers and dragoons. But you don't have skirmishers as British, but you do have cannons, which is what he's training now, and that's going to fulfill the same role as the skirmisher, I suppose. He's actually shipping his 2 cannon shipment, and is now training cannons at this artillery foundry, which is fairly interesting, I must say, because it's I suppose I think it's more appropriate in a British mirror, because your opponent's army is most likely going to be really buff infantry, such as these musketeers here, which are all veteran and have been upgraded. But it's essentially still 300 wood for a production facility, which is expensive, and you've only made 2 units out of it. Yes, they're really big units, they're cannons, they're really strong, but it's still like 300 wood for 2 units. It's often why you don't see artillery foundries being put up until much later in the game, I think. And here we see, of course, that Nagayumi is only got his musketeers here. I believe his 2 cannon shipment is on the way. Yeah, there it is. He's not going to engage just yet until his cannons are there. But, you know, because H2O trained these 2 falconets of his own, he's also got the 2 on the way from the shipment, he's going to have a lot less musketeers, and you can see that reflected in what Nagayumi has. He's got a lot more musketeers there. And these cannons here are going to have to pick up the slack with dealing with the red musketeers. And will they be able to do so? I certainly think they have the potential to, but if he keeps losing lots of musketeers like this, it's not going to be very good. These 2 cannons set up, both of blues not losing 1 cannon for free there, but he does have 4 cannons, and this should be able to adequately deal with 2. I think he's going to be yes, he trades with 1 cannon for 2, though this one is now half health, but you have to remember Nagayumi has a lot more musketeers than H2O does. He's running out of musketeers quickly, and these musketeers coming in to just focus down these cannons. Of course, one of them is half health, and once they're down, H2O really won't have a lot going on for him in this battle. Of course, there are tons of musketeers here. H2O was, sorry, we'll switch over to Nagayumi. And you can see the shipments that he sent. He sent the musketeer/grenadier combat. And during this fight, that has made an absolutely huge difference, giving all of his units plus 15% attack and hit points. And that is clearly reflected in the amount of musketeers left. And I think H2O's engagement there went not so well. I mean, I don't think he had that upgrade active. Well, actually, he did. Perhaps, I'm not sure if it was active during the fight. It might not have been, but let's be honest, it probably was. Otherwise, he would have waited for it. He would have waited for that upgrade before engaging. So they probably both had it. But either way, I don't think the engagement went too well, because he could have perhaps fought behind this wall with his 2 cannons, and you know that would have kept the musketeers out of range, definitely. Anyway, it's not over yet. Their economies will be very, very even at this point in time. H2O's score, despite losing that battle, is actually ahead of Red. He has now got a frigate on the lake. And shipping a frigate to the lake, of course, moving is, you've got this little, well, it's kind of covered up by this boat. But you see Red's flag. Red can move his flag to any water body he likes, and Blue has clearly chosen to move his flag, which is now in this pond, over to here to spawn the frigate. And frigates are very, very effective against land units in more ways than one, because one, the broadside attack, the special attack is absolutely crazy. The regular attack is also very strong. It's like a super long-range falconet. And at the same time, it's like an outpost, because if these units, even if these units were able to overwhelm Red, even if Red's units were even able to overwhelm Blue, he could just pop them into the boat and then run away across the river and deposit them on the other side to safety. So this is why frigates are really, really useful for defending, or even being aggressive, I suppose. But here we see 2 culverins from Nagayumi investing 1,000 resources into what is usually it's not a pointless cannon, but it certainly only uses is countering artillery here and countering boats. That boat get already out of the way. He doesn't not want to be near these guys. These do crazy damage versus artillery and boats, and they have such a long range as well. And that's going to be really effective at countering H2O's cannons. But investing specifically into a unit that counters another unit is a dangerous move, because if H2O now doesn't bother training any more artillery, he is going to train more artillery. He's actually training more culverins to counter the culverins, I suppose. But if he switched perhaps just straight into a different unit entirely that had a similar function to the cannon, then these 2 culverins could be rendered useless. 2 more culverins coming out of Red just there. But yeah, let's take a look at their economies here. We see a 51 settler economy for H2O, having built 18 manors. Nagayumi currently on 56, though I think that's because he sent his 8 settler shipment here. So he's actually behind in terms of settlers trained, but he's caught up ahead due to the fact that he's trained. He sent the 8 settler shipment. As you can see, he's got 14 manors, so he hasn't actually built quite as many manors as H2O. I'll just confirm that H2O hasn't actually shipped his 8 settlers. Yeah, he's still got that to go. So when he does ship the 8 settlers, in theory, he will jump ahead of Nagayumi, and H2O's macro has actually been better, though unfortunately he has had to switch to mills. That really bad hunt that I pointed out earlier is now coming into effect, and as you can see, he's actually got no huntable animals left. And only 2 berry patches which have limited food remaining in them. He's have to invest a lot of wood into these mills, and generally speaking, the player who invests into mills first is usually at a disadvantage, because mills kind of symbolize a lack of map control, which is kind of true. I mean, Nagayumi here, plenty of units, and has access to these deer, which these settlers are now going to start gathering up. and lack of map control, but also this is a slower gathering food source. These, you don't gather food quite as quickly from here, and you had to spend 400 wood on it. Like, that's crazy. In an actual game, you go to mills as a last resort. You never willingly build a mill. And as you can see, he's still got guys on wood. Like, he still needs to collect wood to transition more people over to food. I mean, he's almost got all 20 mana. Well, he has got all 20 manas now, so it is just collecting 400 wood each with these settlers and then switching them over. And because he's invested in these mills, he's, he could have, if he didn't have to build the mills, invested the gather time of the villagers into a different resource and then have actually transformed that into military. And you can see this reflected in the size of their army. Absolutely crazy difference. And I'm going to see, the scores are still fairly even, and it'll be interesting to see how well H2O can hold this. But we'll switch over to Nagayumi here, and we'll be able to see anything on the way. But the boat coming in, going to use its broadside attack perhaps on one of those boats and eliminate it. The special broadside attack can actually destroy a artillery unit, but instead using it on the musketeers to perhaps even his odds here in this battle of micro versus musketeer, etc. But the boat getting away from those cannons doesn't want to be involved, and I believe I cannot see his artillery pieces. I think perhaps that H2O has lost his artillery pieces. He only had some culverins and one falconet here. But yes, making use of the town centre fire, calling his Minutemen from both town centres, I believe. And here, the fight is just going to be down to identifying which one of your units is being targeted, and then perhaps running that unit away so that the rest of your opponent's units will follow that one unit that they are targeting and won't be attacking anything. They'll just be chasing after that guy. And also identifying which units are weak, and then you can see here this particular musketeer has 7 hit points and would die in a single shot. So, whilst that fight is going on, you could find a musketeer, right-click on that one just to finish that one off. Hold the Alt key button. You can look for any other weak musketeers to finish those off. It's all about reducing your opponent's damage potential and etc, etc. But let's switch over to H2O, the defending side, and see what he's got in store. 2 falconets in training. He has plenty of coin. He just shipped 1,000 coin from his home city, and this should be able to train him a fairly decent amount of falconets, which, in theory, I think he might be able to get at least 1, possibly 2 more falconets in. That's 4 falconets, and 4 falconets could deal with these musketeers. They're just... the only issue is they're not very well guarded. Falconet's about to pop, and they're really not in a good spot at all, right next to the artillery foundry. These guys could go into hand combat and just absolutely destroy them, but 4 cannons pop out. Boom, boom, oh my lord, 10 plus 10s everywhere, all of this plus 10 going down, and these cannons doing a really, really effective job in finishing off some of these musketeers, which are already weak from that musket fight. But losing these cannons, you have to remember, they're 500 resources each musketeer is only 100, and all of the cannons going down and not neutralizing nearly enough to make for their cost. This is really not looking too good for H2O. You can see still collecting food at his mills, because where else is he going to generate food from? But these musketeers, once they should be actually, to be fair, he should be able to, the town centre fire and just random musketeers popping out of the barracks should be able to deal with these. He's going to lose a few settlers now, but he can't. He should be okay, but oh, the cannon. There's more guys on the way, so perhaps not. He does, however, have 10 longbowmen that can pop out of his town centre. Here, going to use these settlers by the look of it to bum rush the cannon, going to get into hand combat, and remember, cannons take, they don't have any melee resist, it is only a ranged resist, and this cannon going to go down really quickly, actually, to these settlers. However, at the expense of his economy, he is losing settlers quickly, and this is not looking too good. 10 longbowmen pop out, and this should be what he needs to repel this, especially under the cover of his town centre. But only 51 settlers, and settler production has ceased. It doesn't look too good for H2O, I must say, though. I think he's done a splendid job of removing his opponent from his base. I mean, these musketeers will be dead in just a moment, and that will be that. But we'll switch over to Nagayumi in just a moment. More musketeers on the way, even more pressure just being added in, but even these should be okay for H2O to deal with. He's still got longbowmen left. He's got 10 musketeers about to pop of his own barracks. I think he has definitely held the pressure, which is definitely really, really, well, surprising, I must say. He's done a good job there. And we'll switch over to Nagayumi now and see what is going on. But he's got triple musketeer production going on out of his barracks and has the economy to hold that up as well. He's also had to transition onto mills. His hunts have run out, but he is He's been on hunts for longer than H2O has, which is possibly why he has access to more resources coming in. But 65 settler economy, now sending Team Musketeer / Grenadier hit points. You can tell the difference in the shipments that they're sending. Like, this one is a much later game shipment, and it's going to really, really help him out with, of course, the Musketeers that he's training, and he's training lots of them. 4 cannons about to pop as well. And he's going to combine that with the Musketeers, which he's already upgraded once to Veteran, twice with this guy, this Musketeer Fortress card, and now with this one. But, you know, we see Nagayumi sending Team Musketeer hit points, whereas we saw H2O actually sending stuff like, 10 Longbowmen just to hold the pressure. And 10 Longbowmen only helps you out once, whereas this Musketeer upgrade is going to help him out permanently. Nagayumi on, H2 on 62 settlers, and Nagayumi on 67. So actually, they're not that far behind. He's done a really good job of holding the pressure, even though there was far more units there, and it's still managed to maintain a decent economy, and he's starting to upgrade that. But we'll turn the Fog of War on, and at this point in time, H2O is fine. He's just got to get back on his feet. He's got all of his settlers transitioned onto mills. He's got his economy up and running. He's got a fairly decent economy in terms of settler count. And his military, though, is the only problem. He's not got that many units, and he's now got to start training some more. So he thinks he's fine at this point in time. But then you see this walk into your base. 4 cannons and a whole bunch of musketeers, and that is the end of it. You just think to yourself, no, I can't hold that anymore. But, you know, that is the point at which you resign, when you know you can no longer win. And that point is right here. This was a really entertaining British Mirror. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I'm looking forward to Challenges of the New World, where we'll have Azamk versus Yumiyu in a best of 15. Lots of different civilizations coming up for that. So, be excited. My name has been Interjection, and of course, I will see you all next time. So if we take a look at villager count, we see that H2O was ahead early game. Of course, instead of investing into his military like Nagayumi did, he didn't really build a barracks for quite a long time and kind of lacked military units. You can see that reflected in the fact that he was instead building lots of manor houses. But they both hit up to Fortress Age at similar times. This is the 8 settler shipment from Nagayumi here, and he's, of course, ahead for the entire game there. But then lots of pressure. He's losing lots of settlers during that pressure. Of course, he used some settlers of his own to kill off the falconets. And then here we see he knows he needs to get back into the game, and in order to do that, he has to make sure his economy's going in order to sustain him late game. So he ships 8 settlers, and is actually quite even with H2 on settler count. 68 there at the end of the game for Red, and 64. So only a 4 settler difference, and if that game were to continue, their economies were actually very, very even. We'll take a look at all resources gathered. And you can see, again, very, very even, and Blue actually slightly ahead early on. Possibly this is reflected by the fact that, you know, he built more manors early on and actually had more settlers, but still very, very even. And then, of course, Blue has to switch over to mills. He kind of tails off a little bit, whilst Red is still gathering from hunts and has to switch a little bit later, but he's able to maintain more resources coming in, and at the end of the game actually has a higher resource total overall. Military unit population here actually very, very even. You have to remember cannons are worth 5 population. This is his first conflict, and you can see that actually Blue comes off a lot worse than Red does here, and he builds back up, and then there's another interesting fight here, but he plummets back down almost to 0, and this is where he's defending for the rest of the game, trying to protect his base. And doing a really good job of actually forcing Red out of his base, but then Nagayumi turns up with 4 cannons and a whole bunch of musketeers, and that is the end of the game there. You can see that Blue never really able to replenish his military count, despite being able to maintain the economy, but Red's military is all the way up here, and at this point in time, there's no way he's going to be able to deal with it. But that is all from me. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, remember to give it a like. I do appreciate that, and I will see you all again soon for the next video.